how much value is with that 16th pick in any potential trade that may happen?
Can I just say, we would then have another Phillip with a P. That'd be perfect.
That is true.
Oh, no.
That'd be perfect.
But he wouldn't get cut.
Look, I think the overwhelming odds are the pick is traded, in part because there is that $4 million cap hold that happens, until that player is, even if that player is unsigned, you have a $4 million cap hold that will eat into your cap space. Whereas let's say they trade it, like I said, maybe an early second round pick and a future first round pick. Then the second round pick doesn't have a cap hold. So instead of that $4 million cap hold, you have a basically incomplete roster charge of like $1.1 million. You basically save $2.9 plus million on your cap sheet. And when you're talking about the margins the Sixers have, that's significant. So I just don't think Daryl Morey is likely. I'm not saying it's impossible. I think it's likely he's going to look at someone available at 16 and go like, I think that player can contribute right now, and I'm willing to forego a couple $1 million in cap space to make that happen. I think that's unlikely. So like I said, either it's because they have a major trade lined up at the draft that maybe they didn't pick someone else pick a player for someone else and execute that trade at the new year, or maybe it's just trading for a future pick. So you have that flexibility to basically kick the can down the road in terms of trade flexibility. I don't know. But yeah, I think it's not going to have a ton of trade value. Like, it's a pretty weak draft class overall. I think some people will say that there's some depth to it, so that helps. And it might be the Sixers' second most valuable pick just because it is closer right now, whereas a lot of them are years down the line. I think obviously the most valuable is that Clippers unprotected pick. It's a trade chip for sure. It's probably one of their 2 or 3 most valuable trade chips, but it's not a huge difference maker.
To your point about likely not getting a contributor there. If you know, it's not apples to apples because Ricky was was not a first round pick, although there were times when people believed he was, but just depending on the shot coming out of school
during the process.
Like, he was a first round talent, but the shot really screwed with that.
That's exactly the way I wrote when they took him. First round talent, undrafted jump shot.
So Daryl was asked about Ricky at his end of season presser, and maybe his expectations, development, and whatnot. And essentially, what he said was, you can't really expect someone like him to contribute in a meaningful way until year 3, right? And so, if we're just to say, to give Ricky some kudos he didn't get in the draft process last year, say, okay, if he's similar in talent to someone you would get at 16, and Daryl is likely looking at that player they would take at 16 in the same way, drafting a guy right now at 16 who is not going to help them for another couple years, when we all see that they need guys who can help right now, I think it's, in Morey's mind, it's probably very simple calculus. It's like, if I can move this for present day value, whether that's packaging it with other things, other players, to get a ready-made player prospect in here right now, whether that's taking that, turning it into more picks down the road, and then being able to consolidate extra stuff in pursuit of, I just don't see what the case is that Daryl is going to make that pick. Like, they're going to say that. They'll say, oh yeah, we like these guys, and if they get boxed in and there's nothing available on the trade market that they like by the time the draft comes, we'll start to hear names get floated out. But like, just based on what their window is, and based on the fact that they sat and said, we're just waiting until this summer to make big moves, I find it hard to see a world where they sit at 16 and pick and don't do anything with it.
And I agree, but to fight back a little bit, we've been talking so much about they just need some young people on this roster, and if they feel good about, if they feel play him anyway. Fair point, but they need some young people on this roster if they feel like their player development is good enough, and how we've seen Ricky.
They'll just re-sign
that.
Jeff Doughton again.
I don't disagree with that. I'm throwing it the other way, just as far as the conversation goes. 16, young player, probably going to be a young player, but with some years in college basketball, because the top guys are going to come out as freshmen and sophomore. Maybe you get a junior that could come in and play a little bit as a backup big or a guard who can defend a little bit, handle the ball, take some of that second unit pressure off of some. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
Most years, I would look at this as a chance to get a swing at a young player that they infrequently get a chance to.
Right.
Maybe you get lucky and you get a Tyrese Maxey fall to your lap. Most years, I would say that. But because of the cap implications, I would be surprised. And just because of the sheer importance of getting a trade and or a signing this year right and doing it like it has to be done at this window. It has to be done this summer. Because of that, I would be like maybe a 5% chance they keep this pick.
We all silly like the mayor.